Okay, today's video is the first of a two-part series of how I come up with a bid as a framer. In this video, I'm gonna discuss the things that I look at in order to come up with my bid. Things such as square footage, roof pitch, truss designs, ceiling heights, any kind of special structural details or specifics. I also look at access to the project. Am I able to use equipment? I look at who's on my crew, how many guys, how efficiently can they work, and then just the total time that I think it's gonna take so that I can factor in labor costs, insurance, workers' comp, etc. So let's dive in. When I get a set of plans that I'm supposed to provide a bid for, I'll go through them and I mainly look at square footage. Most plans will have a little breakdown on the first few pages of how much square footage is in the living area, the first floor, the second floor, basement levels, the garages, porches, and then pretty much anything under the roof. I take all those numbers and add them together for the most part and get one solid, this is how much square footage of stuff that's going to be framed under this roof. That's one number that I consider. I look at the roof and the roof pitch and how complicated the roof is, if it's super cut up versus if it's just an A-frame. Obviously, huge difference in time and how long that's gonna take and how complicated that is. So I'll consider that. And then like I said, the roof pitch, because a 4 pitch, is something like this on a house. You can walk on it easily and, walk sheets up and down, versus when you get houses that are like this, not only is it more square footage that you're doing, but it's just a lot more difficult. Lots of the time we're doing work off of forklifts, scissor lifts. It's just a lot more dangerous. Another thing I consider on the inside of the house is the ceiling heights. This is something that can add a ton of time when you're framing a house. If ceiling heights are above 10 feet, you have to make a block line for fire blocking. So that alone adds a ton of time and attention to those walls. Obviously, the higher the walls, the more labor intensive they are. If you're sheeting them, it's more to nail, more to staple. But then also you're having to pay attention to what walls get framed at what height depending on the truss profiles. So that's kind of a two-part thing that ties into trusses. Where we're located, you almost always are using manufactured roof trusses, not hand stacking. And so depending on how complicated the house is, some roof trusses might need to sit on a 9-foot wall, but then pop up to 12 feet and then come back down for a coffer. So the wall over here is framed at 10 feet, the wall over here is at 9 or 12 and 8 or whatever it be. So lots of wall height changes is gonna increase the price of my bid. If a house is all 9-foot or all 10-foot and every single wall you're framing is the same height, that's a lot easier. Okay, another thing that I consider, once I have the house plans, I will ask for structural plans as well. I'm not too concerned with all the structural details. Lots of them are copy and paste details that different engineers use. What I'm more looking for is there any specific major structural detail that's not typical, that maybe is gonna take a little bit more time, more difficulty, or needs special equipment to even accomplish it? For example, some plans that have big, large open spans will call for a steel beam. So if that's something that I'm bidding in, that I have to set this big, massive steel post or beam, or it could be like a big glue lam beam or something that you can't just do by hand. Now we need equipment. And so if I need a forklift or a crane or something like that on site, I have to budget for that as well. Another thing I consider is job access. Ideally, I'll go and get my eyes on the actual location of the project prior to giving a bid, if time permits, because I like to see if I'm gonna be able to use equipment. I own a forklift, and so I pretty much bring it to every job regardless. But if we can use the forklift and drive around the whole house, access the backyard, access the sidewalls, it's gonna be a lot easier for us and we're gonna do it a lot faster than if we're working 2 stories high and we can't get to the backyard, can't lift sheets up, etc. So the price goes up if there's really bad access, just because it's gonna take longer. So those are job specific. The other things that I evaluate, which is more a subjective thing that you'll have to figure out, which is who's on my crew, how many guys, how much am I paying them, what is their capabilities. All of that is gonna determine how long the job's gonna take me so that I can get in my head a rough amount of days. Is this house gonna take us 12 days to frame? Is it gonna take us 35 working days to frame? And then that way I can double check what I'm coming up with on as far as square footage, roof pitch, that end, but then compare it to, okay, how long is this actually gonna take me, my best guess. Along with time is insurance costs. So I just allocate how much I'm paying for insurance, and it's gonna take me 1 month, so I'm gonna allocate about that much insurance cost to this job. Workers' comp, any special equipment that I'm gonna need to rent. And then I look at those two factors, I guess, job specific cost per that plan, and then just my best time guess estimate. And I'll kind of compare those two numbers and try to come up with a fair price, adding in the profit that I'm seeking to make on that job. A fair price as far as I'm gonna win the job, win the bid with this price, but also I'll be profitable and it'll be worth my time. Okay, that's it guys. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll dive into an actual example of house plans that I've received, show you how I come up with the numbers, what things I look at, and how I can come up with a bid that I'm confident in.